and maybe he can surprise the world today.
Absolutely, he's playing from the Dave Cave, which I'm surprised I didn't see my co-commentator for the previous match coming to us live from that studio. We've got Magnus and Jospim getting set, and of course we're dealing with a knockout event as always in the SEC. So as you said, really tough draw for Jospim, who you lose to Magnus. Unfortunately, that's the end of your SEC.
So did David Howell just go next door? Like, did he switch rooms with Magnus there? Well, we'll focus on the bracket here as we start at the top left. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, of course, Magnus and Jose Martinez. The winner moves on to the quarterfinals. Also notably, Fabiano and Prague will be facing off soon, and the winner will move on to face the winner of this match. So the bracket starting to take shape. And Levy, we also have, of course, the finals, right? In London, it's already locked in. That's going to be really exciting. We had the live finals for the previous SEC last year. That was a really exciting event. So I'm glad to see that's the plan once again.
For sure. And speaking of this Caruana Prague matchup, it was a matchup I think in the early rounds a few years ago. Magnus, man, already can't believe it.
And there was a really funny moment at the end. Both players had the exact same reaction on the webcam. They're both completely shaking their head, blinking uncontrollably, like, I can't even believe what I just looked at there. And fellas, I understand. We feel the same.
Except one of them won and one of them lost. So
exactly.
That's the trivia game that we played. This is something we might be seeing of a lot in this match. This is the Jose Martinez Sicilian treatment with white, getting the bishop out to the strange square of d3 and then repositioning it backwards. Although I think it's actually called the Kopek system after Danny Kopek, if I'm not mistaken. But Jose plays it all the time.
Right. Yeah, just having those systems that you play can really help out. But Magnus is actually really going for it here. Just the immediate d5, queenside castling. I mean, you could definitely kingside castle against this, but I think this is a much more direct approach. Maybe just going after that d pawn, bishop f5, maybe a pawn to e4, just trying to rip the game open. And a3 indicates what you're saying, maybe kingside castle and just fully b4. Let's go for it.
Clearly, Jose is familiar with the ideas and plans. He's played this hundreds, if at this point not thousands of times in online games, and maybe offline games. I would not feel particularly comfortable here with black. I see this coming, and I don't exactly... Okay, well, there you go. And by the way, that apparently is the best move. So to take that for what it's worth. And the knight is coming here and here, potentially.
Interesting. Yeah, I almost treat this, the move b4, you've got me thinking, like, maybe do you take it and play bishop takes b4, almost like those Sicilians where you sack a piece and just win every single pawn that exists. Otherwise, I agree, b4 is tough to meet.
Jose just thinking, like, hey, I just lost the game. Do I want to go all in with the move b4? What if it doesn't work? These are the thoughts that go through the head when you play against Magnus, but he played everything to set up this move. The only question is, does he need to make an improving move first? Or maybe something like a knight c4, potentially, to target the pawn on e5. It's easier to move his pieces, obviously, but what do you do if knight c4 is played? I'm not blundering anything, am I? I think it's good. Some e4 could be nasty, though.
I agree. Yeah, you always start to look for those e4 moves. I think maybe even bishop takes c4, followed by e4, like in that order, might be a bit more dangerous. And if you don't play that, maybe I was thinking castle. White could castle here, then prepare it. But perhaps black is intending to move the knight on f6 into d5. And then not only is knight f4 a threat, but b4 becomes just almost impossible to play after that because c3 would hang.
Jose plays knight e4 after no less than 1 minute and 20 seconds of thought, which is never a good sign. But that is the deceptive nature of the 5+1 format. You can easily tank, and Magnus does play his plan, and now Jose decides this is what I want to go for. And look, come on, it's minus 1.2. You invest all this time, and
just a full send, right? F5. I mean, starts with G5. I do think that F5 first was very, very logical, and then just follow it up because now, okay, we're all in here clearly. Both sides going full attack, and G5 was a mistake. This is apparently a blunder. I mean, Levy, what's going on here?
I have no clue. I don't know how you carve your way through this. Like, is it F5? Is that the idea? What was Jose's idea there? Is it to take the pawn on C5? Because that doesn't look like a mistake to me. So is that the reason? It looks like it is because the bar is staying still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, I really start to get nervous about a knight showing up on the d4 square. So much so that I'm even considering knight takes c3 and then knight d4 because the g file opening up looks so devastating that I'm convincing myself the more I'm looking at it that maybe that's an idea.
Yeah, I think so. Because White has to make a move. If B5 is appearing on the board, you might just have knight takes
Yeah.
immediately. Knight takes, and the knight jumps into the d4 square because the pawn no
Yep.
longer covers it. And that looks, maybe White just has to sack the queen at that point. I don't know.
Exactly. Because yeah, the rook g8 and the queen on d7 showing up to g4 h3, any number of these squares looks devastating.
Jose thinking, but thinking in this format is risky business. You have to only have clean thoughts. Suddenly you think for 2 minutes, your position is worse, and you have a minute less on the clock. And after a first game like that, which sort of stuns Magnus awake, going, okay, we're never going to do that again, he will look to shut it down. Bishop e3 appears, and it is a -3 advantage here with moves like f5 probably, Amon, and knight c3 and knight e3 and knight f4 and knight d4 and rook g8. I mean, you name it.
Yeah. So I think the issue is that he started to see and respect, and maybe rightfully so, the idea of knight takes c3 and knight d4. So instead of continuing his attack the way he would want to, knight c5, pawn takes c5, he had to cover that square. And now Magnus is like, well, I don't need the fancy moves. Let's just play the obvious. f5, rook g8. Let's get these pawns going. No way you can handle this.
And I think the key thing is that if the knight appears on c5, that knight actually is threatening business. But if the bishop takes it, there is nothing. White is at least 2 or 3 moves away from conjuring up any sort of threat, and by then Black would have gone to the g file and crashed through and would be much closer to attacking the White King. I think Magnus just sort of senses the incoming pace of game, and Jose is in severe trouble here in game 2.
Well, yeah, the obvious is that if the knight moves, let's say to c5, you take it. You just play knight takes c3. Bishop will then capture on f3 on the next move, and you can't really prevent the g file from opening up. So, yeah, something has got to give here. And I mean, I don't even. Yeah, b5 is an attempt, but after taking here, maybe queen g7, maybe just takes. There's a number of moves.
Queen g7 is very nice. And then if pawn takes, knight takes c3 is lethal.
Exactly. Yeah, just about displacing that queen, and that is going to happen. I mean, look at the action is all on the king side here. You think about it's always a pawn race, right? An attacking race, but there's no attack for white, and Magnus is nearly giving checkmate.
It's so hard to calculate things when pawns are going to walk all the way up the board to your king. You just get scared inherently. But not only did Magnus see all of that, he even saw that the queen could go over here, but there are no threats. There are no threats at all, which is just crazy that he saw that in like 15 seconds. And Jose just resigns him on.
Yeah, time is ticking, and honestly, there's not much to calculate because you must capture the e4 pawn, but then knight c3 is just smack in your face. There's no answer to it. And Magnus, after that dangerous game number 1, delivers an emphatic game number 2.
Yeah, if your pet opening is going to run into stuff like that, it's only bad news. We have d3. This is obviously some sort of super, super, super sideline. It's almost like a King's Indian defense. And now White, when the move b6 appears, you should be taking in the center. And now White just has 2 center pawns. You could even play a3 and play this like a pure Sicilian, getting a position like that. We'll see what Magnus chooses, but he already has a slight advantage because he has 2 center pawns against the 1 for Jospim, and very comfortable position for Magnus.
Yeah, you make a good point that playing e4 to kick the knight and then following up later with d4 is so tempting, but yeah, just build it up. a3 to stop knight b4, so you don't have to worry about that. And then, yeah, probably e4, knight c3, and pawn to d4 looks like a good outcome.
I wonder what Magnus is thinking about. I would be quite afraid if he went for a 30-second thought.
That's telling me, like, wait a minute, did I blunder something immediately in this position? I mean, there's other things to do. Bishop d2 and knight c3 directly. You could transform things immediately by playing d4 just to gain that square, and then maybe intend pawn to e4 on the next turn. So there's definitely a lot of move orders, and Magnus, he knows what he's going for, but he's trying to perfect the move order here.
Opts for knight to c3. Jose responding quite quickly. It's completely fascinating. The amount of things that went through his head. Obviously, e4 was the emphatic move, trying to grab the center. He's instead going for a structural transformation. He wanted the cluster of pawns in the middle and the kind of loner a pawn. Now the knights are just going to get traded, and he will have the 2 pawns in the center. This kind of reminds you of the old school games, the Queen's Indian games played from the 1970s, where black would play this precise setup and then trade, and then white would try to have 2 pawns in the center. The most common thing here that can happen is this sacrificial idea with pawn going to d5, taking, locking the center. And will we see that, or are we going to get, more subdued Magnus just going for a positional game?
Well, it sort of depends on what setup Jose goes for, because now you might expect maybe queen c2, pawn to e4. You can support e4 with queen c2 or rook e1. And okay, here you can even develop bishop f4. Yes, you could play b3 and bishop b2, but I think it's just unnecessarily slow. Take the nice diagonal here, develop immediately, and you're always going to have to watch out for a potential move of pawn to e4. And the other nice maneuver you often see in these positions is knight f3 finding its way to d3. Sometimes e5 d3, sometimes e1 d3, which is a nice square for that piece.
Yeah, if you did a poll of viewers of the channel right now, how many would vote for knight e1? It would be like 12 people, and it would have been by accident.
Depends what the point of the poll is, because Magnus has been asking people to play, predict his openings for Title Tuesday. So I can imagine a lot of knight e1 enjoyers say, hey, Magnus, go ahead and try to win with that one.
This is a very, very high level maneuver. Yeah, it happens in some English positions. I almost feel like Magnus just kind of wanted to play this structure out. He definitely knew that he had a small advantage with the 2-on-1 in the middle, and he could have pushed it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, playing this structure, building some experience, another position where you've got to be super accurate with black. This is purely a structural game, symmetrical pawns, strange piece placements, and kind of interactions. What does black do now with white threatening rook d1 and e4, or just e4 straight away?
Yeah, you have to remember as well, Magnus he's in an obvious different category to everyone else, meaning when he's playing these matches, he wants to try a lot of different positions to figure out how his opponent is going to handle them. Where is he weak? Is it equal positions that he kind of struggles in to find a plan? Is it the middle game? Is it the openings? He's just going to test you in these different types of positions, because Jospin is pretty much going to show up and just play his game. He's got his systems that they work, but Magnus is just going to sort of poke around and figure out the best place to spend his time.
By the way, e4 was going to be well met with the bishop retreating. Mm-hmm. Good double rook placement. Nice idea from Jose, by the way, trading the queens. I think that's very nice, actually. I think he's playing excellent, I have to say. Like, very resourceful, good maneuvering back there.
And we're seeing this knight e5 to likely d3, I want to say. It's just a square that the piece usually ends up on. And it's just, I don't know, it's surprisingly effective. It helps b4, it hits the bishop on c5, blocks the d file, so you can just focus on the c file instead. And it also, of course, gets those bishops traded. So let's see. He has to continue to play as well as you're pointing out he already has. Minute deficit. This is Magnus Carlsen territory. You think you're equal, but you're down on time, and you just have to keep finding a plan. Shake of the head there, Levy. I don't know if he loves it.
He ends up trading. Obviously, the knight is going to go replace the bishop. Magnus backs up. But it very much is a position where white gets to call the next shots.
Hmm.
Knight c4, not knight to d3, but
Yeah, I like knight d3 there, but this has obviously got an immediate threat packed with it. Plus, e3 and e4, maybe both, are going to be played.
yes, e3 is nice, making the bishop retreat, and then after that e4, and then maybe even e5, just a triple
That's right.
combo, attacking every. By the way, yeah, e3 bishop f6 e4 just wins the b6 pawn in some lines, so
Yep.
we could be seeing that here.
Yeah, and the b6 pawn can't move forward. You got e6 and a5 just completely stuck. So c4, much more aggressive square, and Magnus, he's got double the time and everything to play for. You might even see one of those, cagey moves, bishop e1. Like, he's got time to plan this out.
This is an interesting move, looking to take away the f6 square from both of black's pieces. And you can't play rook d7, probably. Just runs into... Also, there is a bishop hanging in the center of the board. That would be a nice bonus to all of this. So
I wonder, is knight f6 the move that he's going to land on?
Ooh.
Obviously, here he's doubting himself, I think, because of e4, but then he found rook takes c4 in that line, which I think made him feel more confident.
Ah, that is a nice... And king f3. Yeah, there we go. Activate the king in the endgame. I think we're going for a Magnus endgame grind with his opponent having a little bit less time.
Yep. But also, Magnus missed that. He definitely thought that he, I think, had that e4. Saw a little bit of a sign on the cam there. Nevertheless, he's not assuming any risk, and he still has a big time advantage. But Josma has to prove himself, Levy. He has to prove that he can take a position that he's played well, that he's genuinely equalized with. But when he's low on time, he has to show that he can keep up.
Knight going to c6. Well, I think he'll keep up for this move for sure. Question is, where does he put his rook? Okay.
Yeah, knight has to retreat here. I guess knight d4 has a few ideas to it. I like the knight there. You can play e3, solidify next. Depending on the move, yeah, knight takes f5 could be an idea, but not anymore.
Yeah, I like e3. Maybe bring the king. E3 is a Magnus type of move.
Yeah, you don't want that knight on d4 to be too loose for too long. And if you can, usually h3 and g4 is another good way to play against that pawn structure.
Because also this pawn will be a long-term liability. If the h-file opens and white can go rook h1 at any moment, it's going to be super unpleasant for black. And I don't like this. I'm on 20 seconds. Knights are on the board. It's a recipe to get tricked.
Knight endgames are the trickiest endgames, truly, for especially for strong players, because there's less hard and fast rules about these endgames. Knights can make it to any square. It's hard to play on certain color complexes.
This move at 4 is very curious because it locks down the two pawns forever, but it also drastically weakens the e3 pawn, and I don't know if Magnus is going to go for this. It's just so committal.
Yeah, I like it, though. I do like the idea of f4. If maybe e4, knight goes to d4, and just kind of sit there and hang out, threatening the f-pawn.
And then you kind of try to run over here. Yeah, the weakness, obviously, if the pawns were traded, it would be a massive positional edge for white. But just the existence of the pawns together makes this annoying. And you don't really want to do this with 15 seconds bonus time, but we'll see.
I can definitely see him playing it. For sure, the time spent is him eyeballing it, because if you don't, black plays king e6, maybe f6, like things get well defended, right? It's not a clear breakthrough anymore. So there you go. Okay, we will see this, in fact.
And why? Some signs of life. King here. Maybe the knight's going to do a little runaround, but to where?
Yep. This is what I mean. Knights are so tricky. Knight a7 to b5, perhaps.
Yep. Maybe now you build this up. You build up these pawns at some point. 3 seconds for Jose. He's got to move.
Yeah, this 1 second is unforgiving.
Okay. b4 maybe. But still he's defending.
Yeah, knight g5?
b5.
Yep. I like that. I do think knight g5 is an idea to hunt some pawns there.
It's just equal. Black is doing
Yep.
very well defensively.
These are the tough moves, though. Knight
Oh!
g5 being a threat. Uh-oh. Yeah, and he just threw it away. He knows it. Like I said, those are the tough moves. Oh my goodness. Magnus, magic, does it again in the end game.
What can you say? Aman, he literally just brought his king back, allowing in the knight because he had 1 second on the clock. And he worked so hard 2 games with black just to lose both of them deep in the game due to time trouble. There's
Yep,
levels to this.
exactly. There really is no other way to describe it. That's just Magnus. That's a Magnus classic. He always plays the position on, so it's not that he had a big advantage, but you always got to worry about the clock. There is the Magnus effect where you just assume his moves and his intentions are the correct ones and that there's something to worry about. So all that put together, 3 seconds on the clock, I mean, he's going to make a mistake at some point, and he really hadn't until that moment. So just bad timing, and yet again, Magnus pulls a win out of absolutely nothing.
Having said that, his game with black was definitely a stomp. So this time he goes for e4, e5, looking not to get too crazy in a Sicilian defense. Already a 3-point lead is absolutely brutal to overcome when you're playing against Magnus. Like, this is already safe, which is kind of messed up, but he's just trying to play different types of games. I'm curious if he's going to play mostly e5, c5. I'm curious if he's going to play like a French defense or two just to play different structures. But right. Jose much faster this game I'm on. Only 5 seconds spent.
Yep. Deciding that he's just going to adopt a quick strategy. Sometimes that I find myself doing that in matches. Especially if I'm behind, I'm like, you know what? Let me stop trying to play my absolute best chess. Let me just play quick and see what happens. And usually, I follow that principle in the opening, and then I kind of slow down and just regress back to my normal, my status quo.
But this looks nice, I do have to say. Having
it's a
said
great position.
A few things have looked nice so far in this match.
That's right.
Now, what do we do from here? Last time you said knight e1 to d3. That's still an idea, just you have to move your rook first. Where does this knight go? Where do some of these pieces go? What's Jose planning?
Yeah, it's tough to say. The f5 square is never that useful. There's always g6 available. So I do think about bringing that knight. The d3 square looks great, but the rook being on e1 actually is enough to probably dissuade me. Like, I don't know if I want it as much as I'm going to play rook e2 and knight e1. So the only other option is really knight d2. It's great to protect on e4, but you always have to remember, Magnus has his maneuvers as well. Even though the bishops are going to be traded with an idea like bishop b6, I do think that Magnus is slowly inching towards a little bit better maneuvering than Jose so far.
h6 is interesting because it doesn't allow black to play the move g6 anymore. That's like the first thing that I thought of, because h6 would be weak, but I guess the idea is to then maybe use the king as well. Wow, bishop c7. This strikes me as a little bit of a waiting game. This strikes me as a little bit of a come get me.
Yeah, you have to watch out for that move. Rook d1, and basically he needed the bishop on c7 as an intermediate move just to allow for the d-pawn to be defended.
Is there a g4? I just feel like with everything on the other side of the board, can I just go g4 here? h4, g5?
I don't mind it. I don't mind it so much that I might even play g3, king g2, and then build it up. But yeah, that was g4. I like that idea.
But if you play c5, you are not going g4. So
that's correct.
Jose is going to play on the queen side. He's going to play where all his pieces are, which definitely makes sense. Now, I am a bit perplexed about the time spent here, considering you push the pawn and it could be taken.
Well, is he going to take on c6? Because I thought that he did this to take on c6 and then just recapture on c5. But instead, he goes for this, which, bishop e7. That's probably why, pawn takes on d5 would have pretty much just lost the game there.
Shockingly, Magnus not falling for it, and now we are heading for a symmetrical position.
It seems to me like pawn takes on c6 is the move that you want just to take control of this knight. But I mean, rook takes, I can understand it. It really feels like pawn takes is better just to cover the knight, and Magnus doesn't want to deal with knight d5.
And the position is equal, but you're getting that sense again, Aman.
Yeah, I wonder, are we like White's position is great, and it's one of those things where it feels like if the players were flipped, like they were playing the other color and Magnus had white, we'd be saying, yeah, okay, Magnus got a weak c6 pawn, just going to be controlling the d file, moving in slowly for the kill, queen c4. But because it's flipped, I'm like, okay, Magnus has got the open b file, moving in for the kill, queen b7.
Yeah, we're front running whatever color that he's playing. Yeah, White's gonna get the c5. The pawns are in the way of the knight, but Magnus will figure it out if he's playing with White.
And if we're thinking it, then Jospim at some point you start to think of things that way as well, and it's a terrible habit to get into. Respecting your opponent a little bit too much. Need to be completely fearless, because the reality is Jose has a very nice position, and there's absolutely zero wrong with it.
Yes, the rook is hanging now, so probably he is considering something like a queen d2. The thing is, White is always so close to trading off on the last rank of the board that I don't know that it's even possible to play the position for a win, even if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Magnus will be dying to play this position for a win, but well, he's done it already multiple times. Just this is definitely not a similar type of position to what we've seen.
And I think what Magnus does, though, is he, like, look at the time. It's 3 minutes, 2 minutes and a half. So he just wants to keep playing. He wants to see, like, he'll take a draw if it must be a draw, but he'll play it to the bitter end. Probably he would be willing to make a draw in that previous knight end game if Jospim had played, just a few more moves correctly. You never know. But he's going to keep playing because he wants to see how comfortable is my opponent in pure time scramble. Is he able to maintain equality over 30, 40 moves?
Yeah. By the way, I'm not feeling particularly optimistic. So, Jose is going to make a few more moves, but last game, Aman, he literally defended all the hardest parts of the game.
Yep.
And then just moved his king back and lost, right? When you're losing games like that, if you're Magnus, you're kind of thinking it's just a matter of time. And he's not even afraid to go to this this queenless endgame. Just trading.
Yeah, we saw this in the previous matchup. It just felt like Ali Reza at some point gained so much confidence, and someone is off screen there. I wonder who that could have been. Magnus briefly looked up from his cam and started laughing uncontrollably. So I feel like that's when, you're getting set for like a school photo and your friends are behind the camera making faces and you're trying to keep a straight face.
Yeah, maybe David Howell came in and pranked his friend by lifting his shirt up or something. The crazy stuff that goes on in the Dave cave, better that it's off camera. But I mean, like, look at this, just walking the king into the middle of the board and laughing and drinking orange soda. Don't we all wish we could play like Magnus?
Yeah, that's
he made a huge mistake there.
Knight d5 and queen takes e5. Magnus raises his eyebrows right now because he just saw it. He just noticed, because now it's a threat. And it's just so funny. You're talking about Magnus in the Dave cave drinking orange soda. That's what happens. He took this too seriously. Went king f8, king e7. That was wrong. Knight d5, a huge miss.
Knight c5, the idea of which was to block the queen's defense of the pawn, and if the queen were to have landed there would have been a double attack. By the way, I'm not even sure Jose saw it.
No, I don't think he did. He was just going routine, because when you're playing Magnus, you're not expecting this random king move to allow you this amazing tactic. You're just saying, okay, he's bringing the king to the middle. Let me do the same.
That would have been the clip right there. Cracking up, stuff happening in the background, takes a sip of soda, walks the king into a devastating tactic and loses on the spot. There you go. What can Jose do here? Some queenie rookie 2.
It's a mentality thing, because he's just shuffling back and forth, defending. Magnus is applying pressure at every junction, and in the one moment Jose had, he wasn't looking for anything.
Jostom's got to get on the board. He's got 4 seconds. Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? B2, like, how do you defend it? He is just dropping pawns left, right, and center. Speaking of center, E5 is hanging.
Yeah, I drew the arrow, rook d4, kind of a nice shutting down move, but maybe there's something even better.
I like that move.
Must be nice. I feel like these games aren't even being won. If anything, they are being lost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that feeling that Jostom he's just sitting there playing defense, and eventually something is going to go amiss.
H5, nice kind of instigating type of move. Maybe get a pawn to G4. A4, A3 when you need it.
Yep. H4, maybe inducing G4, and he plays rook takes E4. So
oh, he just missed B3.
And wait a minute. After rook here, queen G5. Is this what he's spying? And maybe some sack on F6 with knight E4 at the end.
Oh my goodness. Magnus totally missed rook F6.
Yeah.
And he is annoyed.
Jostom, the counter puncher. He had an opportunity for a big moment earlier. He sees it now. And E4, queen F4, he was even ready for that move. 1 second, though. 1 second.
No, but this is inescapable. This is made on the board. Queen F7.
Is it? I mean, it is, but is it? Queen A7.
Yeah, Queen E7 is nice, and now Rook B8. There it is. Wow.
Look at that. Cool, calm, collected with 1 second on the clock. That is a really impressive victory, because he had to find some big tactics, Levy. It's one thing for Magnus to miss it. It's another to see it, and the sarcastic thumbs up as he acknowledges his own shortcomings in that game.
Yes, or I think they were just briefed that we're going to take a break after this, and Magnus gave the thumbs up, not to break the fourth wall. But Aman, we were writing the eulogy over here for Jose Martinez, and out of nowhere he's on the board.
Yeah, and deservedly so. He should be on the board. When you think about the positions that he's had, absolutely. As we go to the midpoint here, we're at the halfway point of the 5+1 portion.
Chess the Last King.